Chapter 1. The Mystic's Grotto. I made it up. I completely, utterly, absolutely made it up. So why, in the name of the long-suffering moon, was Alpha King Damian Blackwood standing on my doorstep holding a white wolf pup? The pup, a fluffy ball of condensed innocence, sneezed a tiny puff of dust. My own wolf, Astrid, who had not had an opinion on anything in 9 years, went so quiet I could feel the inside of my chest empty out. The silence was, if possible, more terrifying than her usual policy of never speaking at all. I gripped the doorframe. 3 months ago it had been a joke. The Midsummer Muddle is the one festival of the year where the Valley Packs come together to eat too much pie and pretend for one afternoon that we are all just people. It is, traditionally, a festival of small theaters of nonsense. A wood-chopping contest where the same 3 men win every year. A pie-eating round whose record holder is an 11-year-old girl from the Southern Crossings. A fiddle band of 3 reeds and a fiddle who never quite remember the second verse of the same reel. And a row of side stalls where you can pay a quarter coin for a charm against bee sting, or a paper rose, or, if you were me 3 months ago, 2 glasses of fermented berry wine into a hot afternoon. Terrible advice. My stall had been called the Mystic's Grotto. The sign had read in my own ink, on my own scrap of butcher's paper, in my own slightly tilted hand, "Fake prophecies, 1 coin honest, 2 coins for kindness, 3/4 off for terrible advice." I had spelled advice with 2 eyes. I had been wearing a hat that was, in any honest light, a tea cozy. He had come to the stall like a man who had been told that taking part in pack festivals was good for morale, and had decided to do his duty. He had been so serious. His dark brows had furrowed. He had set a quarter coin on the wooden plank that was my counter, the way another man might set down a treaty. "Prophesy for me, mystic," he had said. And I, who had spent my whole adult life being deliberately, professionally small, who had spent 9 years muting a wolf in my chest who I no longer trusted, who had a deep-seated and entirely unworked-through need to do something other than be Clara Bellwether, Valley Wolf mentor and quiet woman of small uses, had let my mouth run away from me. I had woven a tale of such specific absurdity that no one could possibly take it seriously. I had been wrong. So very wrong. Item 1. The sky will weep stones of sugar. 2 days after the festival, the spun sugar wheel at the Crossings Fair, a hand-cranked confection device made of brass and twisted wire, malfunctioned in a sudden squall, flung itself half off its base, and fired a volley of rock-hard sugar pellets across the field for the better part of a minute. The pellets came down in the rain like a hailstorm of teeth-shattering sweets. I had laughed, nervously, and eaten 3 extra pies. I had told myself it was a coincidence. Item 2. The river will run with the blood of the berry. A week later, 2 apprentices from the Canning Collective tipped a 400-liter vat of raspberry puree into the Clear Creek tributary. The water ran bright red for 6 hours. The downstream packs, 5 of them, sent worried messengers. The canning master apologized personally to 3 different alphas. My laughter died in my throat. I started cleaning my workshop with the grim focus of a woman trying to outwork a feeling. Item 3. The mountain will speak your name in fire. 8 nights ago. 7 points of flame had lit on the western face of Mount Crestfall at sundown and burned through the dark. 7 slow beacons in a sequence that, from the valley floor, read for any eye that wanted to read it. D-A-M-I-A-N. The whole valley saw. The beacons burned for 6 hours. By the next morning, the slope was scorched and the talkers were talking. I had locked my workshop door, drawn my curtains, and sat on the floor for an hour, deciding whether I had a cousin in Cold Spring I could plausibly hide with. And now, item 4. A ghost of the forest will be delivered unto you. He stood on my porch, Alpha King Damian Blackwood, head of the smallest pack in the valley and the oldest crown line in 300 miles. A man whose presence usually made the air go careful, and he was holding the ghost. A white wolf pup. the kind that, in the old chronicles, was born only to the seer line and only to mark a chosen household. Its little pink nose was twitching, with great dignity, toward the smell of the herb broth I had on the hob. "Clara Bellwether," he said. His voice was low and steady and tired, in a way I could feel against the soles of my feet. My wolf, Astrid, who had not spoken in 9 years, said, "Oh." That was all. One word. Soft, almost an exhalation. I had to grip the doorframe harder to stay upright. He shifted his grip on the pup. The pup made a sound like a kettle considering boiling. "I believe," he said, in the careful voice of a man trying to be polite about a thing he had run out of polite ways to say, "this belongs to you." My mouth opened. My mouth closed. A small squeaking sound emerged. "That," I managed. "That is a pup. A very white pup. A very mythical pup. But I have not in fact ordered a mythical pup. My pup acquiring days are very much over. They were also never started. I work with other people's wolves. Other people's wolves, not those. I am a wolf mentor, Alpha. I help difficult adolescents learn to hear their own. I do not run a seer pup boarding service." I was rambling. My defense mechanism, finely honed over a lifetime of being told I was too much by adults who had clearly never met a quiet wolf trainer, had engaged with all the subtlety of a runaway logging cart. Damien's gaze did not waver. For a second, the alpha persona slipped, and I saw a man who had not slept in any month I could name, and was holding a small, fluffy enigma he very desperately wanted to be my problem. His wolf was, I knew, probably saying the same thing. Fenrir was a legendary wolf, the wolf of an alpha king whose line went back 400 years. And I had spent my whole career learning to feel for the shape of a wolf inside a person, whether they wanted me to or not. Fenrir was a low, quiet presence behind Damien's eyes, watchful, very still, and, if I was reading him correctly, which I usually was, slightly amused. "The one with the sign," Fenrir was saying in the back of Damien's head. "The one who spelled advice with 2 eyes. I knew at the stall. You took 3 months. I have been very patient." I could not, of course, hear Fenrir, but I could see him in the shape of Damien's stillness. I have a professional vocabulary for it. Bonded attentive presentation. Wolf paying very close attention to the human in front of him. Human politely refusing to notice that wolf is paying very close attention. I had seen this before. I had taught 100 adolescents to recognize it. I had never, until that moment, had it pointed at me. Astrid said very quietly, "Milk and pine, that one. The other one, leather, wood smoke, and a soap that costs more than soap should. We could be useful here. Astrid, I have been quiet for a long time, Clara. Astrid, please. I am only observing. I will be quiet again." She was not, by the way, going to be quiet again. 9 years is a long time to be muted. She was, for the first time since I was 22, back, and she was, politely, censorily, irrepressibly, paying attention. The pup wriggled. It made a sound like a small kettle again. It reached out one tiny paw toward me. Reached. Like I was a thing it had been looking for. Something in my chest did something it had no business doing. "Oh," I said quietly. I held out my hands without deciding to. The pup tumbled into them with the relieved sigh of a being who had finally arrived home. It smelled of clean snow and milk. It tucked its nose immediately into the crook of my elbow and went limp with the absolute trust of something that had never been hurt yet. I looked up at Damien. He was watching me. His face had done something complicated and put itself away again before I could see what it was. "You had better come in," I said, because what else could I possibly say? "I have broth. I have a hearth. I have one functioning brain cell, which I would like to use to ask you very politely what the hell is going on." He took up too much space in my workshop, That was the first thing I noticed. The second was that he was very careful not to. My workshop is the front room of the cottage. It is set up the way a wolf mentor's workshop is set up. A long, worn work table, a wall of pegs for training leads and weighted collars, a low, cushioned bench by the hearth for adolescents to sit on while they catch their breath, a basket of soft toys for the youngest first shifters whose wolves had not yet learned the difference between play and bite, a row of small clay jars on a shelf, salve for shift cramp, tonic for the late bloomers, a bitter tea I make for the ones whose wolves come in too loud, a scarred wooden floor I keep clean of clutter because adolescents in a bad shift fall down a lot. It is not a big room. It is precisely big enough for me, 3 teenagers, and a wolf at a time. Damien put the pup in the lowest of the cushioned baskets. There is always a cushioned basket. And the pup promptly fell asleep with one paw over its eyes. He looked at the wall of leads. He looked at the jars on the shelf. He looked at the soft toys. He sat down with great care on the bench by the hearth. He was so big in my workshop. It had never felt small before. "Tea?" I said brightly. I had decided, somewhere in the last 30 seconds, to commit to the strategy of acting as if this were normal. I have 3 kinds: calming, focus, and... There is a chamomile somewhere, but I think a mouse may have nested in it, so I would not personally recommend the chamomile. Clara. There is also goat milk. I have an arrangement with Mrs. Pavel's nephew, who is, by the way, a very nice boy if you ever need a goat-related Clara. I stopped. I turned. He had not raised his voice. He had simply said my name the way a man might lay down a heavy stone, with finality, with apology. "I know you made it up," he said. The kettle, sensing drama, chose that moment to scream. I yanked it off the heat. My hands were shaking. I could feel a flush of pure humiliation crawling up my neck, the way it always did when someone caught me at a lie before I had even committed to it. He knows. Of course he knows. He is an alpha king. He probably smells lying. "He smells fine," Astrid said. "He smells like a man who needs to sit down." He was, in fact, already sitting down. I poured tea I had not actually finished making. I set the cup in front of him. I sat across the work table from him and put my hands flat on the wood, because I needed them to stop trembling, and the wood was solid, and the wood was not asking me questions. "All right," I said. "Yes, fine. I made it up." "I know." At the festival, the whole thing, stones of sugar, blood of berry, mountain of fire, ghost of forest, I made up 4 random, ridiculous things because you looked like you would die before admitting fun was a thing humans did. I was 3 drinks in. I am so sorry. Clara, I am going to refund the festival fee. I never charged you a fee. I am going to invent a fee and then refund it. I am going to leave the valley. I have a cousin in Cold Spring. I will live with the cousin. I will become a person who is not me. Clara. He had reached across the work table. His hand was not quite touching mine, just there, a warm presence 2 inches from the back of my knuckles, close enough that I could feel the heat coming off his skin, close enough that Astrid, who had been quiet for 9 years and was now apparently making up for lost time, hummed and said, "Oh." "I know you made it up," he said. "I knew at the festival. I sat down at your stall. You had a sign that said 3/4 off for terrible advice. You spelled advice with 2 I's. You were wearing a hat that was clearly a tea cozy. I knew." I stared at him. And then it started happening. He pulled his hand back, folded it around his cup. The cup looked like a thimble in his hand. I tried not to notice. 4 of them, Clara. 4 in a row. I have a pack of 211, the smallest pack in the valley and the oldest crown line I am responsible for keeping standing. We have lost 3 border guards in 6 weeks. The Vance pack, 3 times our size, has been moving on our western pasture and our trade route under it. My captains are starting to whisper. 6 of my youngest shifters have had wrong first shifts in 6 weeks. Wrong, Clara. 1 boy is too loud, 1 girl is stuck halfway, 1 late bloomer should have shifted a year ago. And in the middle of that, every joke you told me at a midsummer stall is... He gestured at the basket. The pup, in its sleep, made a small, approving noise. Happening. I am sorry. That is not what I came here to hear. What did you come here to hear? He looked at me for a long second. His shoulders came down, just slightly. Just enough that I saw it, saw the man under the title. I came here, he said, because I have a pack that is fracturing. 6 wrong first shifts in 6 weeks. A ghost pup who walked across 40 miles of Vance territory to sit on your foot. And you are the best wolf mentor in the valley. I came here because I am out of better ideas. And because 4 times in a row is not coincidence. I had no idea what to say. I had spent 9 years being very careful never to be the person someone came to in the middle of the night because they had run out of better ideas. Listen, Astrid said. Just that. Listen. Astrid, I will deal with you later. I have waited 9 years. I can wait longer. But you should listen. Damien, I said carefully, I think I need to sit with this for a little while. Can you give me a day? He nodded slowly. I can give you a day. He stood. He did not crowd me. He moved with the precise economy of a man who had been taught to be careful around small, breakable things and had decided I was one of them. At my door, he stopped. He looked at the basket where the pup was sleeping. He looked at me. Bring her with you, he said. Tomorrow, whatever you decide, bring her to the pack house. Her? Yes. How do you? She told me. He closed the door behind himself with such gentleness that it did not make a sound. I stood in my workshop with a sleeping mythical wolf pup in a cushioned basket and a wolf in my chest, who for the first time in 9 years was sitting up straight and paying very close attention to something. Astrid, I said. Astrid, talk to me. I am here. I am not going anywhere. I picked up the pup. She fit into my palms exactly. She opened one eye, looked at me with the patient resignation of a small creature who had spent some time waiting for the slow human to catch up, and yawned in my face. All right, I said. All right, let us both of us think. Chapter 2. The Long Meadow. I went the next morning. A woman of better judgment would have packed a bag for Cold Spring and left a note. A woman of better judgment would not be a 31-year-old wolf trainer whose wolf had developed a sudden interest in the way Alpha King Damien Blackwood used the word please. I packed 2 clean shifts, a fresh roll of training leads, my soft-tipped redirect stick, 3 jars of shift cramp salve, my notebook of every adolescent I had worked with in the last 5 years, and the pup. She fit into a wicker basket lined with my second-best blanket and rode the long lane to the road with absolute composure, as if she had ridden in baskets her whole life. I locked my workshop door. I unlocked it to check the hob was off. I locked it again. I walked the road to the long avenue of birches and through them up to the Blackwood pack house. Long, low, made of cedar and river stone, with porches on 3 sides and wood smoke from 2 chimneys at once. It looked old. It was old. 400 years old. A pack house that had stood through 3 winters that should have killed it, and 2 wars that nearly had. A woman met me at the head of the drive. She was perhaps 50, with a steel gray braid down her back and forearms that suggested she could split a cord of firewood without taking off her shawl. You will be Clara, she said. I will be, I said. Yes. I am Reeve, the Alpha King's housekeeper, technically. The Alpha King's mother, less technically. He did not tell you I would be here, did he? He did not. He never does. Come on, the kitchen is warm, the pup needs goat milk, and I want to look at you in proper light. I followed her, basket clutched to my chest, with the dawning sense that I had walked, willingly and with packed leads, into a situation considerably bigger than my house. The kitchen was bigger than my house. That was the second thing I noticed. The first was that Damien was in it, sleeves rolled up, kneading bread, and that he was doing it wrong. He looked up when I came in. He did not smile. He did something with his eyes that was not a smile, but was its first cousin twice removed. Then he went back to the dough. "See," Astrid said. "He is good at almost everything. He is bad at the water." I had not, until that moment, considered that Astrid would have a sense of humor. I had assumed 9 years of silence had foreclosed on it. I set the basket on the long table. The pup popped her head up, took in the room, took in Damien, took in Reeve, and made a sound of such complete contentment that I felt my own shoulders come down 2 inches. "The bread," Reeve said, "is going to be terrible." "It is not going to be. He uses too much water," Damien sighed. I, without thinking, said, "You should let it rest twice, once at 3/4 water, again after the second fold. And you are pushing it too hard. The dough is telling you to stop." Damien looked up at me. Reeve looked at me. The pup looked at me. I went very red. "Sorry," I said. "I work with adolescents who are too loud. I am bad at letting things be when they are visibly struggling." Damien's mouth did something that was not a smile. He pulled his hands out of the dough. He wiped them on a towel. He stepped back from the table. "Show me," he said. So I did. I rolled up my sleeves. I taught the alpha king of the smallest pack in the valley how to knead his own bread. Reeve made me a cup of something hot and stood by the hearth, in the very specific posture of a woman watching her son be taught a thing in his own kitchen and finding it absolutely fascinating. Fenrir, I am quite sure, was saying something dry. The shape of his attention in the back of Damien's eyes was the shape of a wolf settling in for a show. When the dough was resting, properly under a clean cloth, Damien washed his hands and said, "The 3 adolescents." "Yes?" "They are in the long meadow behind the house. Their parents brought them up this morning. They have been told you are coming. They have been told that this is additional training, not a punishment." "They will know," I said. "Adolescents always know." "I know." "Tell me about them." He told me. The boy whose wolf had come in too loud was Torin. 12, the youngest, second shift only, his wolf bigger than him in voice and not yet in body. The girl who could not shift back was Wren, 14, second generation Blackwood, her wolf and her human stuck in a half form for 3 days now, sleeping in her parents' barn because she could not bring herself to come to the pack house. The late bloomer was Caleb, 17, who should have shifted at 15, whose father had stopped coming to pack moots out of embarrassment. None of these, I said carefully, would normally happen all at once. No. 6 wrong first shifts in 6 weeks. Yes. The omens are doing this. He looked at me for a long second. Yes, he said. I picked up the basket with the pup in it. Then let us go and meet your adolescents, I said. The long meadow sloped down from the back of the pack house toward a line of pines. It had the look of a place where things were done well. The grass was neither too short nor too long. There was a stone wall at the far end where you could see someone had been mending it on and off for 30 years. There was a flat stump in the middle where, I would later learn, 3 generations of Blackwood alphas had sat to hear minor grievances and to teach the very young to take their first shifts in safety. Torin, Wren, and Caleb were sitting on the stone wall in a row, looking, respectively, like a child who had been told off, a girl who had been crying, and a young man who had decided he was going to die of embarrassment on this very stump. I set the basket down. I walked up to them. I sat on the wall next to Caleb, the late bloomer, because he was the tallest, and I have learned that very tall 17-year-old boys hate being looked down on. I am Clara, I said. I work with wolves who are doing the wrong thing at the wrong volume. I am not going to fix any of you today. I am not going to fix any of you this week. What I am going to do is sit with each of you for as long as it takes for your wolf to tell me what it actually wants. And then I am going to tell you what it said, and then you are going to decide whether to do it." Caleb said very quietly, "What if my wolf does not want anything?" "Your wolf wants a great many things," I said. "Your wolf is 2 years overdue and very polite. Your wolf is waiting for you to want something. We will work on that." He looked away, but his shoulders came down half an inch. Torin, the loud one, was already vibrating. I held out my hand to him, and he came up off the wall like a young dog who had been hoping someone would notice him. Wren did not move. Wren was the one I would need to work for. Wren had been told for 3 days that she was a problem. Damien had stayed at the far edge of the meadow, by the pack house, hands in his pockets. Reeve was somewhere out of sight with Cider. Bramble had clambered out of her basket and was sitting on Torin's foot. I unrolled my redirect stick. I knelt in the grass. "Torin," I said, "tell me what your wolf is shouting about." Torin told me, for about 40 minutes. His wolf was, as I had suspected, shouting because nobody had ever told him which things he was allowed to shout about, and he had been picking, with the loyal, indiscriminate enthusiasm of a young wolf, everything. I taught him the first 2 of the 7 thresholds. He calmed within 20 minutes. His mother, when I told her later, would cry. I sat with Wren for an hour and got her to come down from the wall and lie in the grass. I did not ask her to shift. I asked her, instead, what she had been doing the morning she got stuck. She had been arguing with her father. Her wolf had not wanted to leave the half-form because the half-form had felt safer than going back into a human body that had to keep arguing. I told her that. She cried. I held her hand. The half-form softened, but did not yet release. That would be tomorrow's work, or the day after. "That is fine," I told her. "Your wolf has been waiting for someone to ask. We have asked. She will think about it." I worked with Caleb for less than 15 minutes. He was a late bloomer because he was afraid his wolf would be small. His father was a large man with a large wolf. Caleb had decided, somewhere around the age of 14, that if his wolf came in small, he would never recover from the disappointment in his father's face. I asked him whether his wolf had told him anything about being small. He had to think about it. His wolf, when he listened, had not said anything about size at all. His wolf was, Caleb said hesitantly, bored. "Your wolf is bored of waiting," I said. "Tell her you have heard her. Do not try to shift yet. Tell her tonight. See what she does." By late afternoon, I had 3 adolescents who were not fixed, but who knew they had been heard, which is half of all the work. They went home with their parents. Torin's mother kissed my hands. Wren's father shook mine for too long. Caleb walked back to his father's cart with his shoulders down half an inch, which, for Caleb, was a transformation. Damien had not moved from the edge of the meadow. When I turned, he was watching me. His face was doing the soft thing again. He had not put it away in time. He saw me see it. He put it away. I crossed the meadow to him with a basket on my arm and the pup at my heel, and Astrid in my chest said, very quietly, "He has been watching you for 3 hours, Clara. He has not, in 3 hours, taken his hands out of his pockets once. He took his hands out of his pockets on your porch. He takes his hands out of his pockets for people he respects. Astrid, I am only saying." "Where is your library?" I said to him by way of greeting. His mouth did the not smile. "Inside," he said. "Come." The soft sound of a slim ledger being set down on an old wooden table. The library was a working library. 2 long tables stacked with ledgers, maps pinned to a corkboard, wall-to-wall shelves of records, some leather-bound, some plain, a worn red rug, a wood stove ticking in the corner. It smelled of pipe tobacco and old paper. He lit 2 oil lamps because the afternoon was graying down, and the light was warm and yellow, and it did things to his face I tried not to notice. He pulled a slim ledger off a high shelf. He set it between us. "Read." I read. It was a journal entry from his great-grandfather's time. A mystic had come to the pack in the spring of that year, a woman named Sweetbriar. She had made 4 prophecies. They had all come true. The pack had trusted her. She had asked them to move their winter grounds to the eastern slope, where the snow came late and the deer were thick. The pack had moved. The winter had come early. The snow had come heavy. 43 of the pack had died in the cold, and the wolves of the eastern reach had come down on the survivors. By the next spring, the Blackwood pack had been a third of what it was. Sweetbriar had been gone before the snow. I closed the journal slowly. She was a plant, I said, from a rival pack. We don't know. There are no records of her after. There never are. Damien, I am not telling you because I think you are her, Clara. I knew at the festival you were not. I am telling you because I want you to understand what happens if the 5th omen comes and I make a decision based on it. The Vance pack is going to push for the western pasture and the trade route under it. The pasture is what they want anyone to see. The trade route is what they want. If they take it, I lose the only thing my crown line has been protecting for 400 years. And if your prophecy gives me a direction, a real one, I have to take it. Because I have nothing else. And if it is wrong, Clara, I am Sweetbriar's pack. The Vances, I said carefully, are 3 times your size. Why have they not just attacked? Because they are 3 times my size and we are trained. They can take the pasture. They cannot take it cheaply. A straight war costs them 300 wolves and a generation of recovery. And they know that. They want a cheap win. They want my own pack to break inside the house so they can walk over a broken border without paying, which is, I think, what is happening. The 6 wrong first shifts. Yes. The whispers about your leadership. Yes. The omens. Yes. And if they cannot get a cheap win in time? He paused. Then we go to old rights, he said. I had heard the term. I had grown up in the valley. But it had always been theoretical to me, something packs talked about and rarely did. Tell me, I said. So he told me. The old rights were ancient pack law, older than the valley itself. 2 alphas, with a dispute neither pack could resolve in council, could meet at dawn on neutral ground for single combat. Bare hands or a single blade, duelist's choice. No seconds, no interference. No magic, no wolf form. The losing pack was bound to the terms the winner had named at the start. The terms could not be changed after. It is how my line has survived 400 years against bigger neighbors, he said. If Vance forces me to old rights, I fight Hawthorne Vance. Alpha against alpha. Whatever I win or lose, the terms I name hold. That is the law. Hawthorne Vance, I said carefully, is the largest fighter of his generation. Yes. And you are exhausted. Yes. Damien. Clara. He looked at me across the work table in the warm oil lamp light. I am not asking you to save me, he said. I am asking you to stay through the next 9 days. Work with my adolescence, hold the pup, and if anything comes to you, anything at all, a dream, a feeling, a word, tell me. That is what I am asking. Just stay. The pup, who had followed us into the library, leaned her small white shoulder against my ankle. Stay, Astrid said. We are useful here. We are not too much in this house. We are exactly enough. I had not, until that moment, ever thought of myself as enough. All right, I said. I will stay. He nodded. He turned, perhaps too quickly, and went out. I stood in the library for a long while, with the pup leaning against me and the stove ticking and the smell of his pipe tobacco on the air. And I thought, I am in deeper trouble than I have ever been in my life. And I have, somehow, never felt safer. Chapter 3. The Wood Stove and the Pine. The half-grown unfolded in a rhythm. Mornings, I worked with Torin, Wren, and Caleb in the long meadow. Wren shifted back on the second morning. She did it without warning, in the grass, mid-sentence, her wolf simply giving up the half-form because Wren had finally cried about her father and her wolf had decided the human part of her was now strong enough to carry both of them. She lay in the grass after, naked and shivering, and I wrapped her in my coat and held her while she sobbed. When her father came to fetch her at noon, he could not speak. He just held her. The pup, who had been sitting on her foot, made a small, dignified noise of completion. Torin learned the third and fourth thresholds. He was quieter every day. By the fifth day, he was teaching the other two how to do the second threshold, which is exactly the trajectory of a child who has been heard. Caleb did not shift. Caleb, on the third morning, sat with me by the stone wall and told me his wolf was a she. He had not known. He had assumed his wolf was a he because his father's wolf was a he. He looked at me as if I might tell him this was wrong. I told him it was not wrong. I told him his wolf had been waiting 2 years for someone to ask. Caleb cried, in a quiet 17-year-old way, and went back to his father's house. And the next morning, in his own bed, in his father's house, he shifted for the first time. His wolf was the size of a young deer and pale gray. His father came up to the pack house in the afternoon and shook my hand twice and could not say anything either. Damien watched from the edge of the meadow every morning. He did not interrupt. He did not coach. He simply watched, with his hands out of his pockets. And at noon every day he walked back to the pack house with me and the pup, and we ate the bread Reeve had made that morning, and we did not talk about anything that mattered. And Astrid said, quietly, persistently, repeatedly, "He is watching you. He is taking his hands out of his pockets. He is taking his hands out of his pockets, Clara." On the third afternoon, I overheard, by accident, the two wolves talking. I do not know how. I had been muting Astrid for 9 years, and apparently a wolf you have been muting that long, when she comes back with all of her senses sharpened to a wire. I had been in the kitchen helping Reeve braid the second loaf. Damien had been at the work table, reading a ledger. We had been 3 feet apart. I had not been listening for anything. I heard in the back of my own head what I can only describe as another conversation threading through Astrid's voice. Spare, quiet, plain. "Astrid," Fenrir said. "Fenrir," Astrid said. "She is right about the water. He still uses too much." "I know. I have told her. She is not telling him. She is not at present allowed to." "Who is making the rule that she is not allowed to?" "She is." Yes. A pause. "Astrid, yes? Are you flirting?" "I am observing his hands. They are observable hands." "Astrid, I am a professional." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted iron. Reeve looked up from the dough. Reeve looked at me. Reeve, who had been braiding with absolute composure, raised one eyebrow. "Are you all right, dear?" "Yes." "You went very pink." "Yes, it is the wood stove." "It is not the wood stove." "It is the wood stove, Reeve." She went back to her dough with the slow, careful smile of a woman who had been waiting 20 minutes for me to do exactly that. In the back of my head, Fenrir was saying, with the patience of a man who had been waiting 3 months, "Damien, you could touch her hand. You did not touch her hand at the table on the first night. You did not touch it on the second night. We are now on the third night, and you are reading a ledger you have read 4 times. You could touch her hand." Damien, internally, with the dignity of a king, "Fenrir, I am only saying..." "Fenrir, not now." "When then?" A long pause. Damien closed the ledger. He looked up. Across the kitchen, at me. I, with one hand still in the dough and pink to my hairline, met his eyes. He did not touch my hand. But he did, that night at dinner, sit closer to me on the long bench than the night before. And after dinner, in the library, when I came in to fetch a book Reeve had recommended, he was standing at the shelves and we both reached at once for the same volume, and his hand brushed the back of mine and stayed there for the length of one full breath before he pulled it away. "Oh," said Astrid very softly. "Finally," said Fenrir even more softly. Astrid said, "Hush." Fenrir said, "You hush." I retreated to my room with my book and did not sleep until very late. The 7th night, the vision came. I had been kneading dough at Reeve's elbow. Reeve had decided sometime around the 4th morning that I was to be put to work in her kitchen, and that I was not allowed to refuse. And the kitchen had been quiet and warm and full of the smell of yeast doing what yeast does, and I had been laughing at something Reeve had said about her son's inability to season a stock pot when the vision came. It came as flower light through the window, pure white. For a single second I saw, very clearly, a clearing I had never seen, a tall pine with a flat stone at its foot, an oilcloth packet half buried under the needles, a bundle of papers, a small drawn map. Handwriting I did not at once recognize, but my hands knew, because my hands had been kneading 3 feet from Marlowe Blackwood at this table on the 2nd morning, and the writing in the vision was his. The kitchen came back. I had pushed the heel of my palm right through my loaf. Reeve looked at me. I said, very quietly, "Reeve." She did not ask. She simply wiped her hands on her apron, walked across the kitchen, and shut the kitchen door. "Tell me," she said. Clara." I told her. She listened. She did not interrupt. When I was done, she sat down at the table across from me, and she folded her hands and she said, "How long have you been a seer, Clara Bellwether?" The question caught me so cleanly under the ribs that for a second I could not draw breath. "I am not," I said. "I am a wolf mentor. I am a trainer. I am not, Clara." "Reeve, please." "Clara, I have known your mother. I have known you since you were 6. I have watched you teach my granddaughter's wolf to stop biting the cats. I have watched you spend 9 years muting something that everyone in this valley with eyes can feel sitting in your chest. I am not asking you because I want to embarrass you. I am asking you because my son is going to fight a duel he cannot win in 2 days unless we tell him what we know. How long have you been a seer?" I had not cried in 9 years. I cried for 10 minutes at her kitchen table. Reeve held my hands. The pup put her head on my foot and did not move. When I was done, I told Reeve about the river crossing, about Astrid, about being 22, about a flatboat in spring melt water and my mother who had not come up, about deciding never to listen to Astrid again because I could not bear the cost of having listened too late, about 9 years of teaching every adolescent who came to me the lesson I had refused to learn myself. Reeve listened. When I was done, she said, "We need to tell him." "Yes. Tonight. Yes." She stood up. She tied the loaf into a clean cloth. She washed her hands. She said, "Go and find him. He is in the library. I will keep the kitchen warm." I went to find him. He was at the long table in the library, reading a ledger by the light of a single oil lamp. When I came in, he looked up, and for 1/2 second his face did something I had never seen it do before. Open, unguarded, soft. Then he saw I had been crying. He was across the room before I knew he had moved. "Clara." "Damien," I said. "There is a packet on the western slope, under a pine, by a flat stone. It is Marlowe's writing. Patrol times, a coded list of Vance contacts, a map. It is real. I saw it." He did not move. He did not speak. He did not, even once, ask me if I was sure. "Show me," he said. "The clearing? Could you find it?" I thought. I closed my eyes. I saw the trees. I saw the angle of the light. I felt in some small new part of myself I had not known I had until that moment, where the clearing sat on the map of his land like a pin pressed into a wall. "Yes," I said. "I think I could." He nodded once. He turned to go. I caught his sleeve. I had not meant to. My hand had done it on its own. I stood there in my workshop apron with my fingers in the cuff of his shirt, and I could not, for the life of me, think of one word to say. He looked down at my hand. His face did the soft thing again, just for a second. He covered my hand with his own. His was warm. His fingers were long and calloused at the joints, and he closed them around mine the way a man closes his hand around something he has been carrying a long time and is now setting down on a safe shelf. "Clara," he said. "Just my name." "Not yet," Astrid said. "Not yet, little trainer. He is not safe yet." I let go of his sleeve. "Go," I said. "Be careful." He went. He came back 2 hours before dawn with an oilcloth packet inside his coat. Inside the packet, Marlowe's handwriting. Names of border guards, dates, patrol times, a coded list of Vance contacts. A small drawn map of the western pasture with arrows that indicated in clear and patient detail exactly how to break Damien's pack across its own border. He set it on the long table in the library. He sat down. He put his head in his hands for a long minute and did not move. I did not touch him. I sat across from him with the pup in my lap, and I waited. When he raised his head, his eyes were dry. They were also a color I had not seen them before. Not anger, not quite. Something older than anger. Something tired. 31 years, he said. I know. He pulled me out of a creek. I know. He stood beside me when my father died. He carried my colors at the spring rite. He named his daughter for my mother. I know. I cannot, he said, do this without you. It was not a romantic thing. He did not say it as one. He said it the way a man says the name of a hand he has just realized he needs to hold something heavy. I reached across the table. I did not take his hand. I laid my own, palm up, on the wood between us, near enough that if he wanted to take it, he could, and if he did not want to take it, I would not have made him reach. He took it. His thumb moved once, slowly, across the inside of my wrist, where my pulse was. Oh, Astrid said. I told you, Fenrir said, quietly, in some other room of the bond. I told you. I have been telling you. We sat like that for a long time, until the sky started to come gray at the edges of the windows, until Reeve, somewhere in the house, started a fire in the kitchen and the smell of wood smoke began to creep under the library door, until Damien, very gently, set my hand back down on the table and stood up. The long room convenes the day after tomorrow, he said. Will you stand with me when I name him? Yes. It may go badly, Clara. He has friends, not just Vance, in the pack. I will stand with you. You do not have to. I will stand with you. He looked at me. He did not say thank you. He did not need to. He nodded once and went out, and the door closed behind him, and I sat in the library with my hand still warm where his thumb had been, and a pup asleep in my lap. I had no fifth item. But I had, I realized slowly, started to be a woman who might not need to make one up. Chapter 4. The Long Room. SFX, the long room of an old pack house, dark cedar paneling, a small ceremonial fire being lit on a raised hearth, 63 Blackwoods finding their places on long benches. The long room of the Blackwood pack house had stood for 400 years. It was at the back of the house, paneled in dark cedar, with a raised hearth at one end and a single long table down the center that could seat 30. There were benches along the walls for the rest of the pack. It was the room where every alpha king of the Blackwood line had heard the difficult conversations of his pack. Adoptions and contested matings, and the rare, terrible business of a pack member judged in front of his own people. There were 63 Blackwoods in the room when I came in. I had thought there might be 30. I stood in the doorway with the pup on a soft lead, Reeve had insisted, and Bramble, sensing the size of the room, sat firmly on my left foot and did not move. Damien was at the hearth, in a dark coat I had not seen him wear before. Marlowe was at the long table. He looked up when I came in. He smiled his easy smile, the smile that had pulled Damien out of a frozen creek when they were 6 years old. His hands were in his pockets. Damien saw me. He held my eyes for one long second. He gestured. Come. I came. I sat at his right hand on the bench by the hearth, with the pup on my foot and Reeve 2 paces behind me, and I held my hands in my lap, and Astrid in my chest said very calmly, "We are useful here. We are exactly enough." The long room opened the way the long room always opens, with the lighting of a small fire on the hearth and the formal naming of those present. Damien named the matter at hand. He did so without inflection. He did so without raising his voice. He laid the oilcloth packet on the long table, item by item, the names, the dates, the patrol times, the coded list, the map. He kept his hands on the table. He did not look at Marlowe, not once. When Damien was finished, he said one word. Why? Marlowe stood. He did not run. He stood up the way a man stands up when he has been planning to stand up for some time. His easy laugh had gone out of him. His hands had come out of his pockets at last. Damien, he said, do not in this room. Brother, do not. It was not loud. It was the quietest thing I had ever heard a man do. The whole room felt it land. Marlowe took a long breath. He looked, briefly, at me. He looked at Reeve in the second row. He looked at the long table, at his own handwriting, at the small drawn map of the western pasture in his own ink. He looked last at his Alpha King. He said, "Because you do not listen, Damien." A pause. "You have not listened in 3 years. You make every decision alone. You have refused terms with Vance for 2 seasons while they outflanked us. You were going to lose the western pasture in blood. You were going to lose it in our guards dead in the snow, and you were going to call it honor. I made a deal that saves what I can save. The Vances take the pasture and the trade route. You abdicate, honorably. I am not crown blood. I cannot inherit. I take a tributary beta seat in the new arrangement. My daughter, your mother's namesake, Damien, grows up in a pack that survived the war you would have lost us. That is the deal. That was the deal. You were the only piece I could not move." The long room did not move. I felt, somewhere very deep in my chest, Damien go absolutely still. "You sold," Damien said, "the Western Guard's patrol times to a coalition that has killed 3 of them in 6 weeks. 3 of them, Marlowe. I knew their mothers." "I know. You staged the omens." "Yes. Tell me which." "The first, the spun sugar wheel. I paid the boy. The second, the canning collective. I bribed the apprentices to drop the vat. The fourth, the pup. Vance houndsmen guided her across our land, and I cleared the patrols to let them through." He stopped. He swallowed. "The third, the fire on the mountain, that was not me. I do not know who did it. I went out to the slope the morning after to find the rigging crew. There were no anchors. There was no fuse cord. There were 7 scorched circles in the stone, where 7 fires had burned through the night, and no human hand had touched them. I do not know what did it. I do not know what to tell you about it." The room held its breath. I felt the air around me go very thin, Astrid said in the back of my head, with the deep, clean certainty of a wolf who had been right for 9 years and was about to be acknowledged in public. "That one was me. Tell him that one was me." I rose to my feet. The pup rose with me. "Damien," I said. My voice did not shake. "The third one was Astrid." 63 pairs of eyes turned, 64 with the pup. Damien's eyes were on mine. He did not push me. He did not pull me. He simply made me a doorway in the air of the long room and waited for me to walk through it. "My name is Clara Bellwether," I said. "I am a wolf mentor. I am, it turns out, also a seer. And I have been one since I was 22. And I have spent 9 years muting my wolf because I could not bear the cost of having listened too late to her once. At the festival 3 months ago, I drank 2 glasses of fermented berry wine and made up 4 items to amuse a tired alpha king. And 3 of them were a joke, and 1 of them was a thing my wolf had been trying to tell me for 9 years that I let out of my mouth while I was too drunk to refuse her. Item 3 is real. The Vances did not stage it. Marlowe did not stage it. My wolf set 7 beacons on the western face of Mount Crestfall because she had something to say about your alpha king, and she had finally found a voice to say it in. The long room moved. A murmur. A held breath let out at 30 different places at once. What did she have to say? Damien said quietly. That you are not Sweetbriar's pack, I said. That the line holds. That the crown stands. That the man at the hearth is the alpha king of this house, and the alpha king of this house is exactly enough. He closed his eyes for 1 second. That was when Marlowe moved. I want to be honest, he did not move fast for a beta wolf. He moved fast for a man who had not, in 15 years, expected to need to move fast in this room. He came at Damien with the knife from his hip, a short blade, sharpened twice this morning, drawn in 1 long stride, and Damien, who had his eyes closed for that 1 second, was not looking at him. The pup moved. She was small. She had no business doing what she did. She went for Marlowe's ankle with the absolute conviction of a half-grown ghost who had been waiting for exactly this moment. And Marlowe stumbled, and the blade went wide of where it had been aimed, and I was already there. I had spent 10 years redirecting young wolves out of bad shifts. The body of a man with a knife is not, in the ways that matter, very different from the body of a 14-year-old whose wolf is too loud. You step in, not out. You take the wrist, not the blade. You turn the force, you do not stop it. You set it down somewhere it cannot hurt anything. I stepped in. I took his wrist. I turned. The knife buried itself in the long table to the hilt. Marlowe stared at me. I think he was, on some animal level, bewildered that a 31-year-old wolf mentor with flower on her sleeves had moved, in his blind spot, with the precise economy of a person who had been training every day for a decade not to flinch around dangerous things. Damien had him on the floor a second later. It took 3 men to hold Marlowe down. It took Reeve to settle the back of the room, which she did with the cheerful efficiency of a woman who had been waiting 15 years for the opportunity. The pup, having done her work, sat down on my foot and accepted a piece of cheese from a passing pack second with the gravity of a small queen. Damien was bleeding. I did not see it at first. He was standing over Marlowe and his face was calm, and the room was full of people and shouting, and I did not see the dark patch spreading on the side of his coat until Reeve, who saw everything, said Clara in a voice that was not a question. The knife had not gone fully wide. I got to him before he sat down. I had him on the bench by the hearth. I had his coat open. I had a clean cloth, Reeves, pressed into my hand without my asking, against the long, shallow line that ran from his ribs to his hip. It was not deep. It was bleeding the way scalp wounds bleed, twice as much as they ought to. He was, beneath my hands, breathing carefully. Damien, I am all right. You are not all right. You have a knife wound. Clara. He caught my wrist. His hand was warm. His grip was steady. It is a flesh cut. Look at me. I looked at him. His face was very pale. His eyes were very clear. You stood up, he said. In front of 63 people. You stood up. You told them your wolf set the mountain on fire. You stood up and you let her speak, for the first time in 9 years, and you did it in my long room. I had to. You did not have to. You absolutely did not have to. You could have stayed sitting. You could have let me handle it. You stood up. I know. He was looking at me as if I were the only thing in the room, as if 64 people, including his bleeding traitor of a beta and his mother with a cast-iron stare and a small white pup eating cheese, were not, right now, 2 meters from us. I felt very strangely like crying. He did not let me. He sat up against my hand, slowly, and he said, and his voice was the quietest it had been all afternoon. "Clara, you have to go." I went still. "What?" "You have to go back to your workshop. Today." "Damien, you are bleeding." "Iron Vance is in the field. She has been watching a long room from across the valley. She has had a faction of her own pack rehearsing this exact morning for 6 weeks. The moment Marlowe failed, she will pivot. She is going to invoke old rights in her brother Hawthorne's name. Hawthorne and I will fight at dawn the day after tomorrow on the western slope. And I will not have you on this land when that happens. Do you understand me? I will not have you here. You cannot fight him alone. It is old rights. It has to be alone. Damien. Go home, Clara. Please." His hand was still on my wrist. He let go of it slowly, deliberately, like a man putting down a thing he was not allowed to keep. I stood up. The pup, who had finished her cheese, looked up at me. She made a small, unhappy noise. I picked her up. I picked up the basket. Reeve, who had been standing 3 steps back the whole time, met my eyes and did not say a word, because Reeve, like the pup, like Astrid, like the whole long room, had understood 3 minutes before I did exactly what kind of go-home this was. In the back of my head, Fenrir was saying, small, sharp, very clear, "Damien." No. Damien, with the dignity of an alpha king who had decided something. Fenrir. Yes. No. Yes. She stays. She goes. No. A pause. Fenrir quieter than I had ever heard him. Then I am not speaking until you fix this. Damien, internally, with an old, exhausted patience. Fenrir. Fenrir did not answer. He had, as he would later prove, the longest sulk in the recorded history of pack wolves. I walked out of the long room without looking back. I walked out of the pack house without speaking to anyone. I walked the long avenue of birches to the road, and I walked the road to my lane, and I walked the lane to my workshop, and I unlocked the door, and I walked into my own front room with a sleeping pup in a basket, and I sat down on the cold floor with my back against the work table, and I cried, for the first time in 9 years, for the second time in 2 days. Astrid did not say anything. She did not need to. She was, for the first time in 9 years, simply there, sitting in my chest, quiet, furious, waiting. Chapter 5. The Western Clearing. Workshop interior at very late hours, slow hearth coals, leather oil on a soft cloth, the methodical breathing of a woman who is not sleeping. The sun came up. I did not sleep. I worked. I oiled every training lead on every peg on the wall. I mended a soft collar a child had brought me a month ago and I had been meaning to get to. I made 3 pots of shift cramp salve. I made 1 pot of bitter tea. I cleaned my redirect stick. I sharpened my soft knives. I sat on the cushioned bench by the hearth and went through my notebook of every adolescent I had worked with in 5 years and made small, careful additions in the margins where I had thought of something new. Bramble slept in the basket by the fire. At the dawn of the second day, the dawn Damien had said he would walk to Old Wrights and meet Hawthorne Vance on the western slope, Astrid said, "Clara, I am here. Sit down." I sat, on the floor, with my back against the warm side of the hearth and my hands flecked with leather oil to the wrists. Listen. I closed my eyes. I listened. I had spent 9 years not listening. 9 years ago, I had stood in a riverside town at 22, and Astrid had said, "Don't cross today." And I had taken the flatboat anyway because I had been 22. And I had wanted to get my mother home for her sister's funeral, and I had decided that whatever Astrid was, I would not be a thing that was for her. The flatboat had capsized in the spring melt. My mother had gone under and not come up. I had been pulled out 300 yards downstream by a strawberry farmer named Felix, who had been the first person who had ever made me a cup of tea while I lay shivering, and watched my mother's basket float past on the current. I had not been able to forgive Astrid for knowing. I had not been able to forgive myself for not listening. I had decided at 22 that I would spend the rest of my life being the kind of wolf trainer who taught other people to listen, because I could not be the kind of person who listened myself. It had been the central mistake of my whole adult life. Listen. I listened. I saw a clearing, wide, sun-struck, with a flat stone in the middle of it and the long line of the western ridge behind. I saw two men. One was Damien. One was a man I had not seen before, broader than Damien and older, slow-moving in the way of men who have killed more people than they have names for. The man was holding a long, curved blade. Damien was holding nothing. Bare hands or single blade, duelist's choice. Hawthorne had chosen blade. Damien had chosen nothing, because Damien was an alpha king of a 400-year crown line, and he had decided to take his side of old rights barehanded, with a knife wound across his ribs that was still seeping under its dressing. I saw, behind Hawthorne, in the dark of the trees, nothing. He had come alone. He was following old rights. I felt Astrid go very still. "Then he does not know," she said softly. "Does not know what?" Iron told him this duel was for honor. It was not. It is for succession. Iron has 3 of his own captains writing to her since spring. The moment Hawthorne falls, or wins at sufficient cost to himself, Iron has her people ready in the Vance Long Room to declare her alpha. Hawthorne is being used. He does not know. And old rights cannot be invoked under false pretenses, Astrid said. Pack law older than the valley. If a duel is invoked for a cause that is not the cause, the duel collapses. If you tell Hawthorne what the cause actually is, he is bound by his own pack law to withdraw. He will not believe me. He will not want to. He will believe you. Now get up, get the pup, take Hannigan. Go. I got up. I did not, this time, ask if she was sure. A basket bouncing against a rider's back, the wind through pine trees just before dawn. I have not, in my whole life, ridden a horse the way I rode that morning. I had not ridden a horse, in fact, in 11 years. Hannigan was my father's old gray gelding, with a sweet temper and one bad eye, and he took one look at the pup in the basket on my back and at me on his shoulder, and seemed to understand, with the patience of an animal who had known me my whole life, that today was not a normal day. We went. The road to the western pasture climbs out of the valley along the shoulder of Pine Ridge. It is a fast road if you do not stop. I did not stop. Hannigan, bless him, did not stop. The pup in her basket made small, encouraging chirps that I think she meant to be useful. Astrid, in my chest, was a clean, cold line of attention. The sun came up over the ridge as we went. I reached the clearing 15 minutes before dawn. The clearing was empty. I dismounted. I tied Hannigan to a young pine. I lifted the pup out of the basket. I walked, with her at my heel, to the long, flat stone in the middle of the clearing, and I sat down on it, and I waited. A sound of the trees at 5 minutes to dawn. He was the man I had seen in the vision. He stopped when he saw me. He was tall, broader through the chest than Damien, with gray at his temples and the careful posture of a fighter who had learned a long time ago not to waste a step. He looked at me for a long moment. "You are the seer," he said. Not unkindly, just placing me. "I am Clara Bellwether, yes." "You have no business being here." "I know. This is old rights ground. If your Alpha King knew you were here, he would consider it interference. So would my pack." "I know that too." "Move then, quickly. He will be coming up from the western slope. I will pretend I did not see you." "Hawthorne," I said, "your sister has lied to you about what this duel is for." He went very still. I should mention here that Hawthorne Vance, in the 7 minutes I sat with him on the flat stone in the western clearing, did not move his hands once. He had come barehanded by his own choice. He had laid his long, curved blade across the stump at the edge of the clearing on his way in, and walked the last 20 paces to me with his hands at his sides, because he was the alpha of the largest pack in the valley, and he had decided to face the alpha king of the smallest with no advantage. He was, in his own way, an honorable man. He was also being used. "Tell me what you mean," he said. I told him. I told him about the 3 captains in his own long room who had been writing to Iron since spring. I told him about the seat Iron had been promising them in her own arrangement. I told him about the staged omens. I told him about Marlowe and the deal Iron had made with Marlowe, and the deal Iron had not told him about. I told him that this duel was not a duel for honor. It was a duel to put him in a coffin, or in the kind of victor's exhaustion from which a sister could move on her brother's seat with 3 captains and a public mandate. I told him his sister had been counting, very carefully, the men who would follow her when he fell at dawn this morning, and I told him the names of 2 of them. He did not interrupt. When I was done, he said, "You could be lying." I could be. If you are lying, my pack law requires me to kill you. I am not lying, but I understand the rule. He looked at me for a long time. He looked at the trees behind me. He looked at the flat stone. He looked at the pup, who was sitting very politely on my foot. He said, "Tell me the names of the 2 captains again." I told him. I gave him a 3rd one, that Astrid had given me in the vision and I had not yet said aloud. He flinched at the 3rd one. That was the moment. He closed his eyes. He took one very slow breath. He opened them. "Your wolf is real," he said. Not a question. "My wolf is real." She set fire to a mountain to make a point to a man she had not met. She is in the habit, I am learning, of making points. He almost laughed. He did not, quite, but the corner of his mouth moved. "Clara Bellwether," he said, "if you are lying, I will find you." I am not lying. I know you are not. He turned. He walked back to the stump at the edge of the clearing. He picked up his long curved blade. He held it for one long moment in the new dawn light. Then he set it back down on the stump, point first, and pressed it into the wood with the slow, deliberate weight of a man laying a stone on a grave. A blade left point down in wood is a withdrawal under old rights. He had read it in the same book Damien had. Damien came out of the trees on the western side of the clearing. He had his coat open. He had a long bandage around his ribs. He had not, I realized, been moving quickly, because the wound from yesterday had stiffened in the night and his face was the color of paper. He stopped when he saw Hawthorne's blade in the stump. He stopped for a long time. Then he looked at me. I will tell you about that look one day, when I am ready. I will not tell you here. It was, suffice to say, the look of a man who had walked alone to what he had thought was the place where he would either kill another alpha or be killed by one, and who had instead walked into a clearing in which his enemy had withdrawn under old rights, and a small white pup was sitting on a wolf trainer's foot, and the wolf trainer, who he had told yesterday to go home, was sitting on a flat stone in the dawn light, with her hair coming out of its braid, and her hands still flecked with leather oil from a night of not sleeping. He stood very still. Hawthorne crossed the clearing to him. "Alpha Blackwood," he said. "Alpha Vance." The pack of Vance withdraws under old rights. The cause of this duel was not the cause we were told. I have no quarrel with you this morning that cannot be settled at a proper council. We will speak in 3 days, if it pleases you. It pleases me. My sister, Hawthorne said quietly, will be addressed by her own pack law within the hour. That is your pack's business. I am telling you because you are owed it. Damien inclined his head. Hawthorne, with the slow, careful weight of a man who had decided not to make a mistake twice in one morning, walked out of the clearing toward his own horse. He was gone before the sun cleared the ridge. I stood up from the flat stone. I walked across the clearing to Damien. I stopped a step short of touching him. "Hi," I said. His face did the soft thing. "Hi," he said. I did not, this time, let go. I put my hands very gently on either side of his face. He let me. He closed his eyes for 1 second. I felt under my palms the shape of him, the heat, the stubble of 2 days, the small tick of muscle at his jaw that meant he was holding back something he had not yet given himself permission to feel. "Astrid says," I told him quietly, "you are very stupid." He laughed. Once, a small, surprised sound. "Fenrir," he said, "has not spoken to me since yesterday afternoon. I am told this is because he is sulking. I am told this is going to continue until I fix this." "Fix what?" "Sending you home." "You are not going to send me home again." "No. You are going to find a different way to be afraid of losing me." "Yes." "Damien." "Yes." "I love you." He let out a breath. He kissed me. It was not the kiss I had imagined. It was not theatrical. It was not even particularly long. He kissed me the way a man drinks water after a very long thirst. Once, all the way through, with the whole of his attention. And then he stopped and rested his mouth at the corner of mine, and breathed out, and I felt every part of myself, finally, settle into one shape. "Yes," Astrid said. "Finally," Fenrir said. Damien's mouth twitched. "He is talking again," I said. "He is talking again." "What is he saying?" "He is saying finally. He has been saying finally since the festival. He has had opinions about every day in between. I am not going to tell you about all of them. Tell me one. He thought you had nice hands. He told me at the stall. 3 months ago. 3 months ago. And you did not. Clara, I am 37 years old, and I have not in 15 years as an alpha king learned how to ask someone to stay without first trying to send them away. I am working on it. I am going to be working on it for some time. I expect to be informed when I am being slow. Astrid will inform you. Good. Fenrir will also probably inform you. He will. They are friends now. I noticed. I think Astrid finds him funny. He is funny. He has spent 37 years cultivating it. He says I am the slowest project he has ever taken on. We stood like that in the long grass for a long time. The pup, who had followed us into the meadow, leaned against my ankle. The sun came up properly over the ridge. Hannigan, by the pine, sighed the long sigh of an old horse who has had enough excitement for one morning. "Take me home," I said. "Whose home?" "Yours." He took my hand. He took it the way he had taken it in the library, like a man closing his hand around a thing he was now allowed to keep. We walked home together. Chapter 6. The Mystic's Grotto, Year 2. The murmur of a valley crowd, pies being judged a few stalls down. 3 months later, it was the midsummer muddle again. It was the same field, the same long tables of pie, the same competitive wood chopping at the south end, where the same 3 men who win every year were warming up. The same fermented berry wine, the same fiddle band of 3 reeds and a fiddle who never, in all the years I have lived in this valley, have managed to remember the second verse of the same reel. I had a stall. It was a small stall. It sat between the pie-eating contest and a new stall, which was a goat cheese stall, run by Mrs. Pavel's nephew, who waved at me twice an hour and was a very nice boy who was, I had recently learned, courting Reeves' youngest niece. My sign read, "The Mystic's Grotto, Fake Prophecies, Real Wolf. 3/4 off for terrible advice. 1 coin honest, 2 coins for kindness." I had spelled advice with 2 I's again, deliberately this time. Bramble was at my feet. She was not technically a pup anymore. She was a half-grown, long-legged white wolf with eyes the color of river ice and a habit of yawning at people she found theatrical. She wore a soft leather collar Reeve had made. She sat on my foot through the whole afternoon and accepted small pieces of pie from passing children with the dignity of a small queen. 3 months had passed since the morning in the clearing. The pack had held a council on Marlowe. He had not been killed. Damien Blackwood was not, it turned out, a man who killed his oldest friend, even when his oldest friend had earned it. Marlowe was at the Longhouse, under permanent pack hold, in a small cabin on the edge of Blackwood land where he could think about what he had done. He had not asked for forgiveness. Damien had not offered any. Marlowe's wife and daughter visited him on Sundays. Reeve, who I had thought might never speak his name again, had begun in the last month to send a loaf of bread up the lane every other week. He is still Pack, she had said to me once, very quietly, and Pack does not starve. I had not argued with her. I had braided the loaf myself. The Vance pack had a new alpha. Iron Vance had been exiled by her own pack law, with her 3 captains, to the southern crossings, where she was rumored to be writing, of all things, a memoir. Hawthorne had named his middle cousin as the new beta, and had ridden up to Blackwood Land in midsummer for a council with Damien that had, by all accounts, been the most courteous diplomatic exchange in 3 generations. The western pasture was Blackwood's. The trade route was Blackwood's. The Vance pack had ceded both, under old rights, formally, with Hawthorne's hand on the long table in the long room, and a face that had been, for one short moment, the face of a man who had decided to be a better alpha than his sister had wanted him to be. The valley had spoken, briefly, of all of it. Then the valley had moved on, because the valley always does. And the corn had to be brought in, and the canning had to be done, and the children had to be taught to listen to their wolves. And the wolf trainer at the edge of the valley had a great many adolescents to see, and her hands were full. I had not, in 3 months, baked a single loaf. Reeve had taken over my bread. The boy who had been too loud, Torin, was now my apprentice. He came up the lane 3 mornings a week with his mother and worked with me in the workshop. His wolf was not too loud anymore. His wolf was, in fact, an excellent listener, who could now hear the difference between his own voice and another adolescent's first shift panic. He would be the youngest wolf mentor in the valley by his 18th year. Caleb's gray wolf had grown into the size of a young deer and stayed there, and Caleb, who had decided his wolf was a she, was the happiest 17-year-old in 3 counties. Wren was preparing for her first hunt. Her father wrote me a letter every other month. I had not yet been marked. Damien had not asked. He had been, I think, waiting for me to be ready. He was, as we had agreed, learning to ask for things without first trying to send them away. 3 months was, it turned out, the length of time he had decided was respectful. He came to my stall an hour before sunset. He stood in front of it. He was wearing a clean shirt and his coat. He had his hands out of his pockets. He set, very gravely, 3 coins on my counter. "I would like a prophecy," he said. Bramble, at my foot, made an exaggerated sound of recognition and pressed her cold nose against the back of his knee. I steepled my fingers. I closed my eyes. I assumed my best mystic's face, which had got considerably better with practice. "You will be claimed," I said, "by the one you have already chosen." "Oh. The mountain will speak no name but yours. The river will run, as rivers do, with water. The sky will not weep stones of sugar this year. I have spoken sternly to the spun sugar boy. He has agreed to install a guardrail." That is excellent prophecy work. "A ghost of the forest will continue to sit on your foot and steal pie from passing children. She has stolen 3 pies. She has stolen 7 pies, Alpha King Blackwood. I have been counting. I will be billing you." That is fair. In the back of my head, Astrid said, "He is being slow again. He has not asked yet." In the back of his, presumably, Fenrir said, "Get to it." I opened my eyes. He was watching me. His face was doing the soft thing. He had, in 3 months, stopped trying to put it away when other people were around. It was, I had decided, my favorite of his faces. "Will you walk with me?" he said. "My stall, Reeve will mind your stall." Reeve is at the pie contest. Reeve has been standing 2 paces behind you for 10 minutes for exactly this question. She is here. I turned. Reeve was, in fact, 2 paces behind me. She had been there for some time. She raised one eyebrow at me in the way of women who have been raising one eyebrow at much younger women for 40 years. I came out from behind my stall. He took my hand. He took it the way he had taken it in the library, like a man closing his hand around a thing he was now allowed to keep. We walked, with the pup at our heels, out of the festival grounds. We walked past the wood chopping and the pie tent and the new stage where the same band of 3 reeds and a fiddle was again failing to remember the second verse of the same reel. We walked past the spun sugar boy who waved cheerfully at us. He had installed a guardrail. We walked out into the long meadow that runs down to Clear Creek, where the water was, today, watercolored, and the grass was high, and the light was the long, slow gold that the valley gets in late summer just before the first chill comes. He stopped at the edge of the creek. He turned me towards him. He pushed a piece of hair off my forehead with the back of one knuckle. His hand stayed at the side of my face. "Clara." "Yes?" "I would like, when you are ready, to mark you." I knew the word. I had grown up in the valley. The mark of a mated alpha king was a known thing, a serious thing. A binding the wolf made on the body that did not come off, that the wolf in the other person answered to, that the pack saw and the long room recognized, that meant this one and no other, and for as long as we are both walking. "Astrid told me 3 months ago," I said. "I have, going forward, been a person who listens." His face did the soft thing. He drew me in. He kissed me, slow, in the long grass. "Yes," Astrid said. "Yes. Yes. This one." He set his mouth at the curve where my neck met my shoulder. I closed my eyes. The pup, at our ankles, sighed contentedly. The grass moved in the wind. The creek, very faintly, ran. I will not tell you what came next. It is between him and me and the long grass and a half-grown ghost of the forest who, by every report, has a very firm grasp on the importance of giving 2 people their privacy. I will tell you only this. In the back of my head, Astrid said, "Finally." Soft, almost reverent. In the back of his, presumably, Fenrir said, Astrid said, What?" Fenrir said, "I told him 3 months ago. I told him at the stall. I told him on the porch. I told him in the kitchen. I told him in the library. I told him in the long room. I told him in the meadow. I have been telling him for 93 days. Astrid said, "You have been very patient." Fenrir said, "I have been a saint." Astrid said, "You have been a saint." Fenrir said, "Thank you." A pause. Astrid, softly, "Fenrir." Fenrir, "Yes." Astrid, "Hush now." Fenrir, "Hush." They went quiet together for a long time after that. The story I made up, 3 months ago, was 4 absurd specific things to make a serious man laugh. The story that came true was 4 impossibilities and a long week of bread and a knife in a long table, and a horse at dawn, and a kiss at a creek, and a wolf in my chest who had been waiting 9 years to be acknowledged in public. I had made it up. And then, with him, and her, and the pup and the pack, and a long room and a clearing, and a meadow at the edge of a creek that ran as creeks do, I had, with a great deal of help from a wolf I had spent 9 years refusing to hear, I had made it real.